The story of Julius Caesar is one of the most fascinating ever told, but also one of the most controversial. Hero or villain, genius or tyrant? The answer depends on who's telling the story. On one side, we have a brilliant strategist who transformed Rome into an unbeatable empire. On the other, a man whose unchecked ambition pushed him beyond all limits, even those of the Republic itself. Few leaders in history have inspired as much fascination and controversy at the same time. What if I told you that Caesar's life contains lessons that could change the way you view the world? From his meteoric rise to power to his tragic fall, every chapter of his journey is packed with valuable insights. But beware, not everything is as glorious as it seems. Behind his epic victories lie sacrifices, betrayals, and decisions that shaped the fate of Rome and the leader himself. Have you ever stopped to think about the real cost of being such a powerful leader? This isn't just a story of battles and conquests. It's a human journey, full of challenges, tough choices, and moments that define not only a man, but an entire era. The lingering question is, what made Caesar an eternal name in history, and how can his actions teach us something about leadership, courage, and even limits? Get ready to dive into an epic life filled with glories and shadows. If you've ever felt that your ambitions were too big or that the world was conspiring against your dreams, Caesar's story might surprise you. It not only inspires but also warns. Every power has a price, and every choice has consequences. Now the question is, are you ready to learn from one of history's greatest names? Julius Caesar's life began in 100 BC, in a vibrant and chaotic Rome. From a young age, he absorbed the political and social whirlwind around him, but it was his uncle, Gaius Marius, who deeply shaped him. Marius, a respected general and renowned politician, was like a magnet that drew Caesar's admiration. Imagine a boy watching battles and strategies while hearing stories about military glories and Senate betrayals. It wasn't just learning. It was pure inspiration for a young man who already showed a peculiar spark in his eyes. At that time, destiny seemed like a giant chessboard, and Caesar learned early on that strategy began at home. He grew up in a patrician family, but without great wealth, which forced him to understand the political game to survive. You know that life lesson that says hardships shape champions? Well, Caesar learned that firsthand. From an early age, he realized that to stand out, he would need to be smarter and more ambitious than anyone else. Throughout his youth, Caesar saw Marius as a practical example of leadership and determination. Marius wasn't just a military commander, he was a sharp-minded strategist. He conquered not only territories, but also hearts and minds, leaving a lasting impression on Caesar. Have you ever wondered how leaders like him combined charisma and strength? Caesar certainly pondered these questions as he absorbed every move his uncle made. The environment around him was also a strict teacher. Rome was living through turbulent times, with revolts, civil wars, and conspiracies everywhere. These chaotic settings taught Caesar to stay firm, even in the face of uncertainty. For anyone living in a competitive world today, the lesson is clear. Sometimes, just surviving chaos is a victory. Caesar knew how to turn every challenge into a stepping stone for the future. And so, a curious and audacious young man was being molded into something much greater. His youth wasn't just a learning phase, it was the prologue to an epic journey. Life in Rome, Marius's example and the hardships he faced, created a solid foundation. But, as you'll see, this was only the introduction to a story that would challenge destiny itself. After all, when ambition and opportunity meet, something extraordinary always happens. Julius Caesar, even at the beginning of his career, showed he wasn't just another young patrician in Rome. Upon joining the army, he quickly proved he had a natural knack for leadership. It wasn't just about wielding a sword. It was about understanding people, anticipating moves, and inspiring loyalty. In his early campaigns, Caesar demonstrated a courage that defied even the most seasoned veterans. He knew that to earn respect, he had to be on the front lines, not just commanding from afar. But Caesar wasn't just a man of war. His political ambition drove him to seek prominent positions early on. He understood the power of strategic alliances, building ties with important figures like Crassus and Pompey. In a world where trust was as rare as gold, Caesar used his charm and intelligence to cultivate relationships that would pave his rise. Here's a practical lesson. Success often depends more on who you know than how talented you are. Strategic marriages were also part of the game. Caesar married Cornelia, a move that reinforced his political standing. Although there was love in his choices, every step had a clear purpose. He knew that family alliances could mean the difference between being in power or being forgotten. In politics and life, planning each move like a chess game can be the key to opening seemingly insurmountable doors. As he climbed the ranks of power, Caesar faced challenges that could crush any other man. The Senate, often hostile and political rivals, tried to undermine his progress at every turn. But he stayed calm under pressure, understanding that patience and strategy were his greatest weapons. Who hasn't felt the pressure of a competitive environment where every mistake is magnified? Caesar teaches us that staying focused can be the difference between victory and defeat. Over time, he began to stand out as a charismatic and controversial public figure. His ability to connect with the people while manipulating the powerful was extraordinary. This makes us think, how can you make an impact in your environment while building solid alliances? For Caesar, the answer was balancing bravery on the battlefield with diplomacy in the halls of power. But his journey was just beginning, and the challenges ahead would test his skills like never before. Imagine being kidnapped by pirates in the prime of your youth. That's exactly what happened to Julius Caesar. During a trip across the Aegean Sea, he was captured and ironically treated with respect by his captors. And you know what he did? Instead of giving in to fear, Caesar took the opportunity to show his boldness. He even joked that after his release, he would come back to punish them, and surprisingly, he kept that promise. This episode wasn't just a display of courage, but also of strategic vision. The pirates, not knowing who they were dealing with, demanded a ransom that Caesar considered too low for someone of his importance. He ordered them to raise the price, as if negotiating his own grandeur. This attitude might seem arrogant, but it was a masterstroke to ensure he was taken seriously. What can we learn here? Never underestimate the power of a confident attitude, even in the most adverse circumstances. After the ransom was paid, Caesar didn't rest. He assembled a fleet, tracked down the pirates, and fulfilled his promise to punish them. This revenge wasn't just a matter of honor, it was a clear example of relentless leadership. He showed that anyone challenging his authority would face consequences. This kind of determination is something anyone can apply, whether it's to overcome professional challenges or earn respect in a competitive environment. This story also reveals the importance of turning weaknesses into strengths. Caesar could have walked away from this traumatic experience, but he used the episode as a platform to build his reputation. The lesson here is powerful. Adversity often disguises opportunities. Think of a tough moment in your life. How can you use it to leverage your growth and strengthen your image? And so, with a single act, Caesar not only regained his freedom, but also solidified his reputation as someone who couldn't be challenged unpunished. This event was a milestone in his journey, showing that he was willing to fight for what he believed in. And as the story progressed, Caesar was just beginning to show the world how far his ambition could take him. Julius Caesar, now a respected commander, received a mission that would define his career, leading the campaigns in Gaul. What seemed like just another military endeavor quickly became a spectacle of strategy and boldness. For years, Caesar faced Gallic tribes that, though fragmented, were fiercely independent. Combining diplomacy and military might, he subdued formidable enemies, transforming Gaul into a pillar of Roman expansion. Imagine the pressure of commanding entire legions while dealing with betrayals and fragile alliances. It was everyday life for Caesar. One of his most emblematic moments was the siege of Alesia, where he faced Vercingetorix, the leader who unified the Gauls against Rome. Surrounded by enemy forces in unfavorable terrain, Caesar used brilliant tactics to turn the tide. He built fortifications around his own position, creating a siege within a siege. The result, an overwhelming victory that would echo for centuries. This story teaches us that even when it seems like we're surrounded by problems, creativity and determination can give us the edge. Beyond the battles, Caesar used his campaigns to cement his image as Rome's hero. He wrote extensively about his deeds in Gaul, ensuring his accounts reached the Roman people with maximum impact. It was as if he was a strategist not only on the battlefield, but also in the realm of public relations. It's hard not to draw a parallel with modern self-promotion strategies. Telling your story the right way can be as important as the actions themselves. The gains from these campaigns went far beyond territories. Caesar amassed immense wealth, resources for his legions, and of course, an almost divine status among the Romans. Imagine the impact of returning to Rome with the title of conqueror of Gaul. This kind of return wasn't just triumphant, it was a clear message that Caesar wasn't just a military leader, he was the embodiment of Roman power. But the campaigns in Gaul also brought new responsibilities and enemies. Caesar's success began to worry Rome's senators, who saw his growing influence as a direct threat. It was the beginning of a conflict that would change Rome's history forever. And so, while the dust from the battles in Gaul was starting to settle, the political tensions in Rome were about to boil over. In Roman politics, alliances were as much weapons as shields, and Julius Caesar knew this better than anyone. This is how the first triumvirate was born, a powerful alliance between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. These three men joined forces to dominate the Roman political scene, each bringing something indispensable to the table. Caesar with his charisma and ambition, Pompey with his consolidated military strength, and Crassus with his enormous wealth. It was a pact of convenience, but one that would shape Rome's future for years to come. The strength of the triumvirate lay in its ability to manipulate Roman politics for their own interests. Caesar used Crassus's influence and Pompey's respect to secure his position as consul and later the governance of Gaul. It was a political chess game where every move was calculated. Imagine this in today's world. Strategic alliances are like business partnerships aimed at bigger goals but require balance and trust, even if it's fragile. However, maintaining such a powerful alliance wasn't easy. Conflicts of interest began to arise, especially between Pompey and Caesar. Despite the tensions, the triumvirate initially held strong, consolidating the power of the three and marginalizing the Senate. It's like walking a tightrope. At any moment, the balance could be lost. Caesar, however, was a master at navigating the turbulent waters of politics. What's most fascinating is how Caesar used the triumvirate to expand his own agenda. While his partners were busy with other issues, he solidified his power and influence, especially after his victorious campaigns in Gaul. He knew that alliances are useful only as long as they serve a greater purpose. This makes us think, how can you use partnerships strategically to achieve your goals without losing your autonomy? As the bonds of the triumvirate began to weaken, Caesar was already one step ahead. He understood that to survive in Roman politics, he needed to be ready to abandon old alliances and create new strategies. So, as the triumvirate started to fall apart, Caesar was prepared to face the challenges that would arise. And with that, the political game in Rome began to take an even more unpredictable turn. Julius Caesar's life wasn't marked only by grand conquests, but also by devastating losses that shaped his journey. One of the deepest blows was the death of his wife, Cornelia, whom he loved deeply. This loss wasn't just a personal episode, it was a moment of transition. In ancient Rome, where family alliances held as much weight as political decisions, Caesar had to balance his grief with his relentless ambition. It's like losing a key piece in a board game and still continuing to move forward, even with a heavy heart. Cornelia had been an important bridge to consolidate his political position, but Caesar didn't allow himself to weaken. He understood that life, especially in politics, demands resilience. For anyone facing losses in modern life, the lesson is clear. Even when it seems like everything is lost, there's always a next step. Caesar turned his pain into motivation, pursuing even greater goals, as if he wanted to prove that even tragedy could be overcome with determination. Moreover, these losses made him bolder. Caesar began to realize that life was too short to be wasted in hesitation. He engaged in more aggressive political campaigns, always seeking higher positions of power. For example, his appointment as interim dictator showed how willing he was to take risks that others might consider reckless. In fact, his ambition seemed to grow exponentially with each challenge he overcame. It's a practical lesson. Adversities can fuel our strength if we know how to use them. What set Caesar apart was his ability to turn personal tragedies into opportunities to connect even more deeply with the people. He knew that by showing humanity in the face of adversity, he earned sympathy and respect. Today, in a world where vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, Caesar's story teaches us that sharing our pain can make us stronger and inspire those around us. With each loss and each triumph, Caesar was shaping himself for a greater destiny. With every political victory, he was closer to assuming absolute power. But as with any ambitious trajectory, the challenges didn't stop there. As his power grew, so did the watchful eyes of his enemies, always ready to strike at the right moment. Julius Caesar's path to absolute power wasn't a straight line, but a trail filled with conflicts, intrigues, and bold decisions. One of the most crucial moments was the start of the Civil War, when his tensions with Pompey reached their peak. The Senate, fearing Caesar's growing power, demanded that he disband his legions and return to Rome as a private citizen. But Caesar, with his famous gesture of crossing the Rubicon River, declared war on the system. "The die is cast," he said, and with that he began one of the most dramatic phases in Rome's history. Crossing the Rubicon symbolized more than rebellion. It was an act of self-confidence and relentless strategy. By directly challenging Pompey and the Senate, Caesar showed he wasn't willing to back down. He knew the risk was high, but he also understood that great victories require proportional courage. For anyone facing tough decisions today, there's a valuable lesson here. Sometimes you need to leave your comfort zone to achieve something extraordinary. The Civil War was a series of battles as political as they were military. Pompey, once his ally, became Caesar's greatest rival. Their forces clashed in epic conflicts like the Battle of Pharsalus, where Caesar, with fewer soldiers, defeated Pompey's army using brilliant strategies. Imagine being outnumbered and still coming out on top. Caesar proved that a strategist's mind is as powerful a weapon as a well-trained army. During these wars, Caesar didn't just defeat his enemies. He also won the people over. He pardoned captured soldiers, gave lands to veterans, and relieved popular debts. He understood that war wasn't just won on the battlefield, but also in the hearts and minds of the Romans. For any modern leader, this is a golden lesson. Balancing firmness and empathy is essential to maintain support in tough times. With the final victory over Pompey, Caesar emerged as the most powerful man in Rome. But this triumph didn't mark the end of his struggles. In fact, it brought new challenges, as consolidating absolute power in such a fragmented republic was a Herculean task. And while the winds of the Civil War began to settle, new horizons and intrigues loomed on the horizon, ready to test his leadership once again. After the turmoil of the Civil War, Julius Caesar turned his eyes to Egypt, a land of immense wealth and strategic importance. It was there that he met Cleopatra, a figure as charismatic as he was. Amidst the struggles for the Egyptian crown, Caesar intervened, positioning himself as Cleopatra's mediator and protector against her brother, Ptolemy III. But what began as a political alliance quickly evolved into something deeper. The union between the two became legendary, blending passion and ambition. In Egypt, Caesar not only forged alliances, but also participated in decisive battles, such as the Siege of Alexandria. Despite being initially at a disadvantage, he once again showcased his ability to turn crises into victories. Imagine leading troops in a foreign territory, surrounded by uncertainties. Caesar used every available resource, both military and political, to ensure his triumph. This episode teaches us the importance of quickly adapting and thinking strategically in adverse situations. The partnership with Cleopatra went far beyond the military field. Cleopatra, a shrewd and visionary ruler, saw in Caesar the chance to solidify her power in Egypt and expand her influence. Caesar, in turn, recognized the potential of an alliance with Egypt to strengthen his own dominance in Rome. They weren't just allies, they were complementary strategists. For anyone looking to form partnerships in life or business, this story is an example of how two ambitious minds can come together to create something monumental. The relationship between Caesar and Cleopatra also resulted in an heir, Ptolemy Caesar, known as Caesarion. For the Roman people, this was a novelty that mixed admiration and controversy. After all, Caesar was seen as someone who transcended limits, even those of tradition. This human aspect of his story, his personal connection with Cleopatra, and the legacy left by his son, reminds us that even the greatest leaders have aspects of their lives that are deeply personal and universal. After his time in Egypt, Caesar returned to Rome, carrying not only wealth but also the political and cultural influence that Cleopatra represented. He had proven he could navigate not just the seas of war, but also the intricate paths of political alliances and human relationships. However, returning to Rome brought new challenges and rivalries as Caesar's growing power began to provoke dangerous resentments among his peers. Julius Caesar's destiny reached its climax in 44 BC, when his ambition and power reached levels few could tolerate. Appointed dictator for life, he was seen by many as Rome's savior, while others viewed him as a threat to the Republic. His reform projects, from reorganizing the calendar to redistributing land, showed a long-term vision. However, his increasing authority alarmed the senators, who saw his actions as a harbinger of tyranny. The Senate, a place of debates and alliances, became a nest of deadly conspiracies. On the fateful day of March 15th, the Ides of March, Caesar was lured to the theater of Pompey under the guise of a meeting. There, surrounded by those he considered allies, he was brutally stabbed 23 times. Among the conspirators was Brutus, a man Caesar almost regarded as a son. This tragic moment immortalized the phrase "et tu, Brute," a symbol of the deepest betrayal. This historical scene reminds us that often the greatest dangers come from where we least expect them. Caesar's death was a turning point. Although his assassins believed they were restoring the Republic, the effect was the opposite. His death sparked a wave of chaos, culminating in the rise of his adopted heir, Octavian, and the end of the Roman Republic. It's a powerful lesson on how hasty actions, even with noble intentions, can have unforeseen consequences. In modern life, how often do we see impulsive decisions that generate outcomes contrary to what was planned? Despite his tragic death, Caesar's legacy is undeniable. His name became synonymous with leadership and power, inspiring generations of rulers. Terms like Tsar and Kaiser derive from his name, a testament to his global influence. And it's not just that. His cultural, political, and military impact shaped the Western world in ways that still resonate today. When you think of visionary leadership, it's hard not to think of Caesar. But the true strength of Caesar's legacy lies in how he pushed the boundaries of his time. He transformed Rome, a divided republican city, into a unified and powerful empire. And although his life ended in tragedy, his story invites us to reflect. How far are we willing to go for our ambitions? With that, the cycle of his life closed, but the impact of his choices opened new chapters for Rome and the world. Julius. Caesar lived a life that many dream of, but few dare to pursue. He didn't just change the course of history. He showed that the courage to challenge the status quo can turn dreams into grand realities. But now the question remains, what will you do with this knowledge? Are you ready to face your own battles and create a legacy? Or will you remain stuck in your comfort zone? Caesar's greatest lesson isn't just in his victories, but in the boldness to live intensely, even in the face of overwhelming challenges. Look around, and you'll see that many of the problems we face today have roots in the same issues Caesar dealt with: ambition, leadership, and the challenges of handling power. How can you apply this to your life? Is it time to take more risks? Maybe start a project you've been putting off, or even learn to lead with more confidence? Caesar's story teaches us that to achieve something extraordinary, you need to act, even when the path seems uncertain. Now it's your turn to reflect. What are your Gallic wars? What territories still need to be conquered in your life? Maybe it's time to take the next step, whether at work, in your studies, or in your relationships. After all, as Caesar showed, great leaders turn obstacles into stepping stones for success. And remember, history is only written by those who have the courage to face it. Don't let this lesson go to waste. Subscribe to our channel now and turn on notifications to keep exploring incredible stories like this one. Each video brings lessons that can transform the way you see the world. And who knows, help you create your own epic story. Let's build something that resonates for generations together. So, what will be the next chapter of your life?